In today's prophecy update, and again, there's so many different key events that are happening around the world that we can look at. But when it does come to Bible prophecy, we always need to zero in what's happening in Israel, what's happening in the Middle East, and also what's going on in Europe. And but there's a lot of people when you do talk about prophecy, they have their concerns, they have their hang-ups, and where people have suffered at the hands because of the way it's been handled, or taken out of context, or date setting to exegeting the newspapers, trying to identify the Antichrist and all these other speculations. And it creates a bit of a distaste for a lot of people when it talks about end times prophecy. And so we got to be careful. You know, I can see why people are so turned off. But that doesn't take away what is actually happening, what's going on right now. And again, when we look at prophecy, what does the Bible say? And again, the real focus is always going to be Israel. Just this week, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, he said that there will most likely be a military operation in Gaza Strip. Again, nothing new with the potential wars that are going on there. Gaza Strip is primarily where the Palestinians are. So things have escalated to a whole nother level. This could also potentially be a linchpin with all the other countries that wanting to invade, even potentially what could happen with Ezekiel 38, 39, which is a whole nother discussion. But this is something that he's willing to do to defend and protect Israel from the oncoming and constant rocket attacks that keep coming in, the balloons that keep coming in over the walls. And so it is a security threat, what's going on there. And like we said, there's potential of other gatherings that is happening, coming in, that would come in through Syria and the Ezekiel 38 scenario. Earlier this week, I met with a ministry that do a lot of stuff in Iran. And just amazing work, what is happening there. Revival breaking out, people coming to the Lord like you wouldn't ever believe. More there than other places around the world. That stuff's not reported, and they do a lot of training and a lot of great stuff. And in fact, I have a magazine in the back there, and how to pray for Iran in 30 days. And so it's just really great material to take home. But we got discussing about the whole Ezekiel prophecy and all those scenarios, and what's God's purpose in the war and even the destruction that is described in Ezekiel. And to understand the war, what's going on, and the destruction that's described there in Ezekiel, we must, again, first understand the sovereignty of God when it comes down to all Bible prophecy and all that's going to take place there. And even in the midst of devastation, God is still in control. And God has a purpose in mind. And you see this even all throughout the Bible, especially the Old Testament, how God is sovereignly ruling over all. Things will happen, and He allows things to happen. And when Ezekiel says that God will bring the enemy against His land, he's simply saying that God will bring these nations to doom, essentially. They're not going to be victorious over Israel. God's will always be accomplished in the end, regardless of where your theology is. God's will always be accomplished. God's purpose for that dreadful battle in the last days is very clear and simple, is that He intends it so people would come to know the saving knowledge of Him, that they would come to put their faith and trust in Him. And that's the ultimate what you want to see happening. And so as Ezekiel so vividly describes that invasion of these other nations coming in through Syria, as we're seeing just more and more development, what's going on there, but how God will protect Israel. And the destruction of these countries in these last days. And again, just the identifying Russia and Iran coming in is just a modern nations, as it's been described, who are bent on fulfilling prophecy, who are bent on trying to wipe Israel off the face of the map. That has been very clear for them. But we can see how all these events are going to lead to the ultimate accomplishment of God's purposes. So this is something that we can see happening in the news today, but as exactly as the Bible is describing. So So it's just important, it's good to keep that pulse on what is happening around the world, but more specifically what's going on in Israel and within that region. So not to over-speculate certain things, or this is what's happening. Again, we're just keeping a pulse of what's going on. So we need that balance when we look at prophecy. Amen?